There is a €8, 5 billion industry that thrives on you, never learning what I'm about to show you. Every spring, roughly 80% of households walk into a garden center and buy bottles of chemicals to spray on their vegetables. We have been doing it for decades. The pest comes, we spray, it returns, and we spray again. The companies that sell those bottles generate another €2, 8 billion in sales in the United States alone. But 300 meters west of Manhattan, in the rolling farmlands of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, lives a community of over 44,000 people who have been growing food for more than 3 centuries without purchasing a single bottle of synthetic pesticide. Not one. Their gardens don't just survive, they flourish. Their tomato plants are fuller, their squash vines are cleaner, and their pest damage is a mere fraction of what most of us contend with. I stood in one of those gardens a few years ago, gazing at rows of peppers completely free of aphids, and I thought, what have these people discovered that the rest of us are still paying to avoid learning? Today, I am going to meticulously break down exactly what Amish gardeners do differently, step by step, so you can begin applying these methods in your own backyard this season. And by the end, you will discover a trick involving nothing more than an old toilet paper roll that will make you wonder why you never thought of it before. Let me provide some context, because this is not merely a gardening story. It is a narrative about a system designed to foster dependence and a community that quietly opted out of it centuries ago. The modern pesticide industry traces its commercial origins back to the 1940s, immediately following World War II, when chemical companies sought new markets for the synthetic compounds they had manufactured for the war effort. DDT, organophosphates, chlorinated hydrocarbons, these were repurposed from warfare to agriculture almost overnight. And here is the part that should give you pause. The business model was never about permanently solving your pest problem. It was about managing it, just enough so that you would return next season and purchase more. This is not a conspiracy. It is basic economics. A product that genuinely eliminated the need for itself would be a terrible business. And so, for 80 years, most of us have been locked into a cycle of spraying, temporary suppression, observing pests return, and spraying again. Meanwhile, the Amish stood in their gardens, observing the entire spectacle and shaking their heads, because they had already figured out something the rest of the agricultural world is only now beginning to prove with peer-reviewed science. You do not defeat pests by killing them. You defeat pests by cultivating a garden they cannot survive in. And that distinction, that singular shift in thinking, is worth more than every bottle on the shelf at your garden center combined. Let me show you how it works, starting with the part that surprised me the most. The story that truly illuminated this for me is that of a man named John Kemp. If you have never heard his name, that is about to change, because what he discovered represents one of the most significant breakthroughs in modern agriculture. It came from an Amish kid with an 8th grade education. Kemp grew up on a small fruit and vegetable farm in northeast Ohio. His father was the regional pesticide supplier. They were the family that tested every new chemical first, then recommended it to other farmers. Consequently, they were spraying more than almost anyone else in the area. Yet, between 2002 and 2004, they lost upwards of 70% of their 4 primary crops 3 years in a row, despite utilizing every available pesticide. Their plants were being devoured by insects and decimated by disease, and nothing in a bottle could halt it. Then, in 2004, something happened that changed everything. The Kemp family rented a neighboring field from a dairy farmer. This field had never been treated with pesticides. It had been maintained in a simple 4-year rotation of corn, small grains, and hay. They planted cantaloupe across both fields, the treated and the untreated, with the rows extending directly across the property line. They use the same variety, the same planting date, the same fertilizer, and the same fungicide applications. At harvest on the Kemp family soil, which had been intensively sprayed for over a decade, 80% of the leaves were covered in powdery mildew. On the dairy farmer's untreated soil, there was zero infection, not 5%, not 10%, but absolute zero. You could observe a clean line straight down the middle of the field where the two soils met. Identical plants 60 centimeters apart, one destroyed, the other perfectly healthy. Kemp wanted to know why. And this is where his story becomes extraordinary. This one 8-year-old Amish kid who had never progressed beyond 8th grade, who grew up without television, internet, or a phone, walked into his local public library and began reading, not gardening magazines, but university textbooks. For 2 years, he devoured university textbooks on biology, chemistry, plant physiology, and agronomy. He ordered obscure research volumes from Germany and France through interlibrary loan. What he discovered was staggering. Plants possess an immune system, not a metaphorical one, but a literal, multi-layered immune system, much like our own. And what Kemp found is that this immune system operates on various levels. At the most fundamental level, when a plant receives the correct mineral nutrition, specifically iron, manganese, copper, zinc, and nitrogen in the right form, along with adequate magnesium, it achieves complete photosynthesis. When this occurs, the plant converts all of its soluble nitrates into complete proteins. And here's the part that will fundamentally alter how you perceive every insect in your garden. Larval insects, such as caterpillars, hornworms, and loopers, and sucking insects like aphids, whiteflies, and thrips feed on soluble nitrates. They literally cannot digest complete proteins. Their digestive systems are too simple. So, when a plant is healthy enough to convert all its nitrogen into complete proteins, those insects land on it, attempt to feed, find nothing they can utilize, and depart. The plant has not killed them. It has not repelled them. It has simply removed their food source at the cellular level. The pest starves in the presence of abundance. Reread that sentence because it redefines everything you thought you knew about insect control. The aphid lands on your tomato, tries to feed, finds nothing it can process, and flies away hungry. No spray, no trap, no intervention whatsoever. The plant defended itself by being too healthy to eat. This shift in resistance can occur within 24 to 48 hours of the right minerals becoming available. Within 2 days, a plant can transform from a pest magnet to pest-proof. This is not folklore. It is not wishful thinking. Kemp founded a company called Advancing Eco-Agriculture in 2006. And by 2024, it was advising farmers on over 6 million hectares across North America. Peer-reviewed research from institutions like Cornell, Penn State, and multiple European universities confirms that mineral-balanced, biologically active soils produce plants with stronger cell walls, higher concentrations of defensive compounds, and measurably greater pest resistance. A paper from Frontiers in Plant Science found that balanced nutrition is the first line of plant defense, with minerals directly modulating immune enzymes and triggering systemic resistance pathways. The science has caught up to what the Amish understood through 300 years of observation. The soil is not just where the plant lives. The soil is the plant's immune system. So here is your first actionable step, and it is the foundation upon which everything else builds. Every spring, before you place a single transplant in the ground, spread 5 centimeters of well-aged compost across your garden beds and work it into the top 10 to 15 centimeters of soil. If you can obtain compost that includes aged horse or cow manure, even better. That combination of plant matter and animal waste creates an incredibly diverse soil microbiome. The Amish do not buy bags of synthetic fertilizer. They build soil with compost, cover crops, and animal manure, and they have been doing it on the same plots of land for generations. The key is consistency. A single application will not transform your garden, but after 2 or 3 seasons of building your soil biology this way, you will notice something remarkable. Your plants will have thicker stems, darker green foliage, and they will recover from minor pest feeding much faster than they used to. I began doing this 4 years ago, and the change in my tomato and pepper plants alone was worth every wheelbarrow of compost I hauled. If you are in a cooler growing zone, say zones 3 through 5, apply your compost as early as the ground is workable, ideally 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost date. In warmer zones 7 through 9, you can start in late winter. But here is what most people miss, and it is the reason I needed to tell you John Kemp's story first. Soil health is not a separate topic from pest control. They are the same topic. Weak soil grows weak plants, and weak plants are a dinner invitation for every pest in your area. Now, this next piece is where the Amish approach starts to look radically different from anything you typically see in a conventional garden. And honestly, it is the part that made me feel the most foolish for not figuring out sooner. Most gardens are planted in neat, single-crop rows. Tomatoes here, beans there, squash way over on that side. It looks organized, and it makes harvesting easy. But to a pest, a long row of one crop is a highway with neon signs and no speed limit. Amish gardeners do the opposite. They intentionally mix everything up. They plant aromatic herbs and flowers directly among their vegetables. The reason is elegant. Most garden pests locate their target plants by smell. Aphids, cabbage moths, tomato hornworms, cucumber beetles, they all navigate by following the chemical signals their host plants release into the air. When you surround those host plants with strong-smelling companions, you create what entomologists call olfactory confusion. The pests literally cannot find your tomatoes because the basil, marigolds, and dill are drowning out the signal. It is like trying to hear someone whisper your name in a stadium full of screaming fans. Here is exactly how to set this up. For every 3 to 4 tomato plants, tuck in one basil plant, about 20 to 25 centimeters from the base. Basil repels aphids, whiteflies, and tomato hornworms. And as a bonus, many gardeners believe it enhances tomato flavor. The Amish have planted these two together for generations. Between rows of cabbage, broccoli, or kale, plant dill or cilantro every 30 to 35 centimeters. These herbs repel cabbage moths and imported cabbage worms. But here is the double benefit, and this is where it gets clever. When the dill and cilantro flower, they attract parasitic wasps and hoverflies, which are voracious predators of aphids and caterpillars. So, you are repelling one set of pests while simultaneously recruiting their natural enemies. That is not just gardening. That is military strategy with flowers. Around the borders of your beds, plant French marigolds, not the large pom-pom African types, but the smaller French varieties. Space them 25 to 30 centimeters apart. Their roots release a compound called alpha-terthianol into the soil that suppresses root knot nematodes, and their scent above ground deters whiteflies and squash bugs. Multiple agricultural universities have confirmed this in controlled studies. It is not tradition for tradition's sake. It is marigolds in science, perfected by centuries of practice. Now, the Amish understand something about insects that took me decades to learn, and it completely flipped my entire approach. A healthy garden is not a garden devoid of insects. A healthy garden is one with the right insects. Consider this. A single ladybug can consume up to 50 aphids in a single day. One lacewing larva can devour 200 aphids in its short lifetime. Parasitic wasps lay their eggs inside hornworms and cabbage worms. killing them from the inside out. Ground beetles patrol the soil surface at night, hunting slugs, cutworms, and grubs while you sleep. These creatures are not just helpful, they are your unpaid, round-the-clock pest control team, and the Amish build their gardens specifically to keep them employed. The simplest way to do this is to create what is called an insect strip. This is a small section of your garden, even just a row, 60 centimeters wide along one border, planted densely with flowers and herbs that beneficial insects need for nectar and pollen. Plant sweet alyssum at the front because it stays low and blooms all season. Behind it, alternate yarrow and dill about 25 to 30 centimeters apart. If you have room, add fennel at the back. The key is continuous bloom from spring through fall, so the beneficial insects always have a reason to stay. Within a few weeks of the first flowers opening, that strip will be buzzing with hoverflies, parasitic wasps, lacewings, and ladybugs. And once those populations establish, they will patrol your entire garden. The Amish also leave small areas of their property intentionally wild. A patch of clover near the garden, an unmowed strip along the fence, a pile of stones where ground beetles can shelter. These are not signs of laziness, they are habitat. Every beneficial insect needs somewhere to live, breed, and overwinter. If your garden is perfectly manicured with bare soil between every row, you have essentially hung a no-vacancy sign for the very creatures you want working for you. Here's a mistake I made early on that I do not want you to repeat. My first year trying this, I bought a bag of ladybugs, released them one evening, and by the next morning, they were all gone. Every single one. You need to give them a reason to stay. Plant the habitat first, then invite the guests. If you are in zones 4 through 6, where beneficial populations build slowly in spring, purchasing ladybug or lacewing egg releases can help jumpstart things, but only if the flowering habitat is already in place. Otherwise, you are just feeding your neighbor's garden. This next habit feels the most old-fashioned, and that is precisely why it works better than anything you can buy in a bottle. Every Amish gardener I've spoken with in Lancaster County talks about the morning walk as if it is as natural as breakfast. It is not complicated, it is not dramatic, but it might be the single most effective pest control practice you can integrate into your life. Every morning, you walk your garden for 15 to 20 minutes. You bring a small bucket, half filled with water, and a squirt of dish soap. You start at one end and systematically work your way through every row. You are not just admiring your plants. You are turning over leaves, checking the undersides of squash foliage, and scanning every stem. And when you find a pest, you pick it off by hand and drop it into the bucket. I know it sounds almost ridiculously simple, but here is why it matters so much. Most catastrophic pest damage does not occur because of 1 or 2 bugs. It happens because a small population was allowed to explode unchecked. A single tomato hornworm can strip an entire branch in 48 hours. A pair of squash bugs can lay hundreds of eggs in a single week. By the time you notice the damage and reach for a spray bottle, you are already 3 steps behind. The Amish morning walk catches problems while they are still just problems, not disasters. 2 hornworms on Monday become 0 hornworms on Monday, instead of 20 hornworms by Friday. For tomatoes, look for hornworms on the top leaves and along the stems. They camouflage well, but look for dark droppings on the leaves below as a giveaway. For squash and cucumbers, flip the leaves and look for small clusters of bronze-colored eggs on the undersides. Those are squash bug eggs. Scraping them off with your thumbnail right now saves you a genuine headache 2 weeks from now. For brassicas, watch for small green caterpillars and the white butterflies hovering around your plants, laying eggs. After doing this for 2 seasons, I can tell you it becomes second nature. It is 15 minutes of quiet time before the day begins. and it keeps you connected to what is actually happening in your garden in a way that no amount of chemical intervention ever will. You develop an eye for what is normal and what is not. You learn the rhythms and you catch things early, which is 90% of the battle. Now, this next technique is one of my favorites because it is clever in a way that makes you smile once you understand the logic. Instead of trying to keep pests away from your garden entirely, the Amish sometimes invite them in on purpose and then send them to the wrong address. This is called trap cropping. You plant something the pest likes even more than your main crop, and you place it on the edges where it draws them away from the vegetables you actually care about. Nasturtiums are the classic example. Aphids are wildly attracted to nasturtiums, far more so than to your beans or peppers. Plant them in a ring around the outside of your garden or at the ends of your rows, about 15 to 20 centimeters apart. The aphids will cluster on the nasturtiums and largely leave your main crops alone. Once the nasturtiums are loaded with aphids, you have two choices: pull the plants and dispose of them, or better yet, leave them and let the ladybugs and lacewings from your insectary strip come and feast. You've just created a self-sustaining cycle. The trap crop attracts the pests, the beneficial insects find the pests, and your vegetables sit in the middle, untouched. Think about that for a second. You did not fight anything. You did not buy anything. You did not spray anything. You arranged living things in a pattern, and the pest problem solved itself. That is not just gardening. That is engineering an ecosystem. For flea beetles, which are a nightmare on eggplant, and young brassicas, plant a row of radishes as a trap crop, about 60 centimeters, in front of your main planting. Flea beetles prefer radish leaves and will congregate there. Sacrifice the radish tops, and your eggplants stay clean. Blue Hubbard squash is another legendary trap crop. If you grow any kind of squash or pumpkin, planting a couple of Blue Hubbard plants at the far corners of your garden will magnetically draw squash, vine borers, and cucumber beetles away from your main crop. You are not trying to save the Blue Hubbard. You are using it as a decoy. The beauty of trap cropping is that it requires no sprays, no products, and no daily labor beyond what you are already doing on your morning walk. You plant it once. The pests do exactly what nature designed them to do. They just do it somewhere you do not care about. Now, let us keep going, because we are getting to the part that changed everything for me. For the times when pest pressure is heavier than usual, or when you have a specific problem that needs direct attention, the Amish rely on homemade deterrent sprays made from ingredients they already have in the kitchen. Here is the recipe I learned from an Amish family in Lancaster County, and it is the one I keep coming back to because it works and takes about 10 minutes. Take 4 to 5 cloves of garlic and 2 hot peppers. Cayenne works perfectly, but any hot pepper you have will do. Chop them up. Add them to 1 liter of warm water and let the mixture steep overnight for at least 12 hours. The next morning, strain it through cheesecloth into a spray bottle and add 1 teaspoon of plain liquid dish soap. Not detergent, just simple dish soap. The soap helps the spray stick to the leaves and also breaks down the waxy coating on soft-bodied insects like aphids. Spray this directly on affected plants, focusing on the undersides of leaves where most pests hide. Apply in the early morning or late evening. Never spray in direct midday sun, because the soap can cause minor leaf burn in intense heat. 1 application usually keeps pests at bay for 5 to 7 days. Reapply after heavy rain. Now, I want to be straightforward with you. This spray does not kill pests on contact the way a synthetic chemical does. It deters them. It makes your plants smell and taste unpleasant, so the pests move on to easier targets. Combined with soil health, companion planting, beneficial insects, and daily monitoring we have already covered, that is usually more than enough. This is part of a system, not a standalone product. And that is the fundamental difference between the Amish approach and what the pesticide industry wants you to believe. They want you to think one bottle can solve the problem. The Amish know it takes a system. Let me walk you through some patterns that I used to follow religiously that the Amish approach completely reframes. And there is no judgment here, because I did every single one of these for longer than I care to admit. The first pattern is reaching for a spray at the first sign of a bug. Most of us were taught that any pest presence signifies a problem. The Amish see a few aphids, and they do not panic. They know the ladybugs are coming. A small pest population is actually food for your beneficial insects. Spray those aphids away, and you have also removed the food source that keeps your predator population alive. You have just fired your entire pest control team because you did not want to see them eating lunch on the job. And then you wonder why next week there are even more aphids than before. It is because you eliminated the only thing standing between you and an infestation. The second pattern is planting in monoculture rows. I did this for years because it looked organized and made harvesting simple. But a long row of nothing but cabbage is a lit runway for cabbage moths. Interplanting disrupts the signal. The third pattern is keeping the garden too clean. Bare soil between rows might look tidy, but it eliminates habitat for ground beetles, spiders, and soil-dwelling predators. A thin layer of straw mulch or a strip of clover between rows gives those allies somewhere to live. The fourth pattern, and this is the big one, is treating pest control and soil health as two separate topics. I did this for most of my gardening life. The Amish taught me they are the same conversation. Weak soil grows weak plants. Weak plants cannot convert their nitrogen into complete proteins. And plants full of soluble nitrates are a buffet for every aphid and hornworm within 400 meters. When you build the soil, you build the plant's immune system, and the pest problem quietly solves itself from the inside out. John Kemp proved it on 6 million hectares. Generations of Amish families proved it in their kitchen gardens. The science is settled. The only question is whether you are willing to stop reaching for the bottle and start building the system. Now, here is something I learned from an Amish family that I have never seen mentioned in any gardening book, any YouTube channel, or any extension office publication. It is one of those ideas that seems almost insultingly simple until you try it and realize it solves a problem you have been losing sleep over for years. When the Amish transplant young seedlings into the garden in spring, they place a collar made from a simple cardboard tube around the base of each plant. They push it about 5 centimeters into the soil and leave about 5 centimeters rising above the surface. They use old toilet paper rolls. Some families cut paper towel rolls into shorter sections. That is it. That is the whole technique. This cardboard collar does two things, and both of them are brilliant. First, it creates a physical barrier against cutworms. Cutworms are the larvae that crawl along the soil surface at night and chew clean through the stems of young transplants. Most gardeners do not even know cutworms are the reason they lose seedlings, because the damage happens in the dark and the evidence is just a toppled stem by morning. Cutworms are responsible for more dead transplants than most of us realize. The collar stops them completely. They cannot climb over it, and they cannot chew through it. Second, and this is the part that is elegantly perfect, the cardboard breaks down naturally over 4 to 6 weeks. That is precisely the window of time it takes for the plant stem to harden or lignify to the point where cutworms can no longer bite through it. The protection arrives when the plant needs it most and dissolves when the plant no longer needs it. No plastic, no waste, no chemicals, no purchase. Just a piece of cardboard and the understanding that the most effective protection is not about overpowering nature, but about giving a living thing shelter during its most vulnerable moment. I started using these collars 3 seasons ago. Before that, I lost 5 to 8 transplants every single spring, and I blamed everything from the weather to bad seedlings to the neighbor's cat. Since I started using the collars, I have lost almost none, not 1 or 2. The total cost across 3 seasons has been €0 and perhaps 5 minutes of work per planting day. I did the math once. Over 3 years, the conventional approach would have cost me somewhere around €37 to €56 in cutworm treatments and replacement seedlings. The Amish approach cost me nothing and worked better. That is the kind of quiet, practical wisdom that does not sell products, does not generate advertising revenue, and does not make headlines, but saves your garden one seedling at a time. And here is the thing that ties all of this together, the thing the Amish understand in their bones that the rest of us are slowly, painfully relearning. There is a German word that runs through every aspect of Amish life, like a river through a valley, Gelassenheit. It does not translate cleanly into English, but the closest meaning is something like yielding to the natural order, surrendering the need to control everything, and trusting that the system has a balance built into it, a balance that was designed long before we showed up with our spray bottles and our quarterly earnings reports. It is not passivity, it is partnership. And the garden is where you can see it most clearly. When you spray a pesticide, even an organic one, you are overriding the system. You kill the pest, sure, but you also kill the ladybugs, the lacewings, the parasitic wasps, and the ground beetles that were already working to manage those pests for free. And then you wonder why the pests come back worse next time. It is because you destroyed the army that was defending you. The Amish do not fight nature. They set the table and let nature eat. They build the soil so the plants can build their own immunity. They plant companions so the pests cannot find their targets. They create habitat so the beneficial insects have a home. They walk the garden every morning so nothing gets out of hand. They use trap crops to redirect what they cannot prevent. And when they need a little extra help, they mix something from the kitchen that deters without destroying. It is not one technique. It is a philosophy, and it has been working on the same land, for the same families, for over 300 years, while the rest of us have been buying bottles and spraying hope. So here is what I want you to take away from this. Build your soil every single year with compost and aged organic matter. Plant companions that confuse pests and attract their natural enemies. Create habitat for the beneficial insects that do the hard work while you sleep. Walk your garden every morning and catch problems while they are still small. Use trap crops to redirect pests away from what matters. And when you need a boost, mix up a simple garlic and pepper spray that deters without wiping out the system. Try the cardboard collar on your transplants this spring. It costs nothing. It takes 5 minutes. And it might be the single most satisfying change you make in your garden this year. The Amish have been doing this for 3 centuries. The science now confirms why it works. The only thing missing is you trying it. And honestly, once you start seeing the results, once you watch a ladybug devour 50 aphids in a single afternoon, once you see your tomato plant standing tall and green in August, while your neighbors are yellowing and chewed, you will wonder why anyone ever convinced us there was a better way inside a bottle. If any of this changed how you think about your garden, leave a comment and tell me what you are going to try first. I read every single one. And if you found this fascinating, hit subscribe for more stories like this. I have got deep dives coming on how traditional cultures around the world approach everything from soil building to seed saving. And trust me, there are more secrets like this waiting to be uncovered. Thanks for spending time with me today. I will see you in the next one.